Alrighty. Testing. Am I live? Yes. Here we go. Alright, guys. This is a bittersweet moment in being a YouTuber because I'm not going to pronounce every single letter in that. The COPPA organization, basically the website that is all about protecting children and making sure they're not accessing adult content on YouTube, even though there is a dedicated YouTube Kids section, is coming down hard on certain content creators. Now, I highly doubt this is going to mean anything for me because only one out of my 600 videos did I ever make explicitly for kids, and that was a one-day thing because I happened to be teaching. I happened to be teaching some middle schoolers, and I thought, well, YouTube is probably a good idea or a good way to present my views. But then I took it down because I figured, I guess that's the one exception on my channel of something that was made for kids. However, according to COPPA's guidelines, even if you say, no, I am not targeting children, no, I'm a good guy, I am not here for any evil or malicious intention, they're going to use bots to try to examine every inch of your video. And if that sounds appropriate, it should be. Tell me about it, Synthwave. Oh, and welcome back. So, yeah, it sounds creepy. It sounds like one of those perverted doctor things saying, ooh, let me take a look at you. That's exactly what you should be thinking. They are literally going to be scanning every word you say, every action, every thumbnail. And if they say, you are a liar, you said that this wasn't made for kids. And so therefore, well, I don't really know how that's going to affect my channel because I've never been paid for any of my content. Everything I do is for free. I guess if you really wanted to be specific, sometimes I pay out of my own pocket for certain things in the videos, but I never try to make a profit. So as a result, a couple of the penalties that they listed as possibilities if you break their laws are, just to name a few, they might disable liking and disliking, they might disable commenting, and, well, I don't really care if they get rid of ads. In fact, I would love it if they'd get rid of ads. If any of you see ads on my videos, let me know, because I don't want ads on my video. I want you guys to be able to see it all the way through, because if I'm in mid, and then an ad for a game I don't even like shows up, it's like, no, that's not cool. If you wanted to watch that stuff, you would go to another YouTuber. When you come to my channel, you come to watch me. You don't come to hear someone say, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 500, now for every system in existence. It's like, no, that's not my thing. Do you think you could elaborate on that a bit, Synthwave? I'm having a bit of trouble visualizing what you're talking about. So anyway, even if I appeal with the broad, that might be an idea, anti_. I will check that out. Actually, if you could put a link in the comment section, that would be really helpful, because there's so many videos that have the same name that I want to make sure I'm watching what you're suggesting. I wish I could fight back. The problem is that I'm not sure if I'm the target audience that should be fighting back, because it seems like the majority of people that are complaining about this COPPA stuff are the people that are getting paid for their content. And so personalized ads are being disabled, which means that if you're the type of person that's a huge fan of Breath of the Wild, you could say, I want Breath of the Wild style ads to appear in my videos. But they're not going to let you do that because you're targeting children. Or they might restrict what kind of ads you can put in the first place. Now, for those of us that hate ads, for those of us that don't get paid, I think we're going to be in the clear, because ever since day one of my official reboot of my YouTube channel, I strictly said these videos, and I have never gone against that statement, for lack of a better word, These videos are intended for high schoolers and up. I have never intended for my audiences to be any lower than that. I mean, I guess like late middle schoolers maybe, but I guess the broad definition is like 13 and up, really. And if premium apid, okay, cool, thanks. And if they're saying you are targeting these kinds of kids when I'm not, when in actuality, I'm mostly trying to target mature audiences. In fact, I actually recently looked at the age demographics for my YouTube channel, and I'll relook them up now while I still have a chance, in case they get rid of that too. I'm going to look up my demographics of lifetime views of my channel. Oof, this is so weird to see my own live stream showing up on my recommended videos list because I have to do a separate window. So we're going into channel analytics. Hopefully COPPA will like actually look at these statistics because like if I can see it, then maybe they can see it too, and maybe that'll tell them like, oh, this guy can hardly even attract his own target audience, let alone the audience that we don't want him to target. So let's see here. 100% male. I don't know what to feel about that because I feel like, oh, that's last 28 days. Okay, let me change this filter to lifetime. Okay, much, much better. Okay, here's an updated list. So, first off, gender. We have 87.9% males and 12.1% females. As far as countries, 49.5% is in the US, and everything else is in the 0% or less than 1% range. Age 18 to 24, 64.9%. And 25 to 35-year-olds make up 31%, 0% in every other category. So, in other words, there's not even a children's demographic here. The lowest demographic that you can see on YouTube's algorithm is 13 to 17. And I don't know what to think about that because I could have sworn I've had at least one or two 16-year-olds, but maybe because it's like 0.0.0.0.0.0.0.1%, maybe they're figuring that's just way too low. My friend, his name is Andy. His name is Engineer for God. His channel is mostly about Dante's Inferno, and he talks about like the Catholic messages you can find in Dante's works. He also does like there's a Tangerine Dream album that came out that was covering the entire Dante trilogy, which is called the Divine Comedy. That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all. Now, could you clarify if you mean put the bio in at the start of every video I make, or make that the introduction to my channel? Because that's a really good point. Anti-underscore. Synthwave, if you're still here, I just want to clarify. How do I word this? Oh, cool. Yeah. I'll definitely keep that in consideration. Yeah, Dante's Inferno, he and I tried to do a collab on his channel where I tried to give my thoughts on Dante, and I feel like I was kind of unfair in my assessments because I am a very straightforward, literal kind of person, and Dante is more for like the head in the clouds, intuitive, far-reaching, big picture type people, and that is not me at all. Maybe every now and then when I'm thinking about Harry Potter theories, but not on a regular basis. Actually, if it wasn't for me looking up a simplified explanation of Dante through Shmoop, the website Shmoop, which does like summaries of ancient literature to provide understanding for a more modern audience, I wouldn't have written my Zero Escape. novelization. Now that is not targeting children in the slightest. That was based on an M-rated game, and even on the fan fiction website, you can list everything that's included in it, and pretty much the only thing that's not in there is profanity. I wanted to, show off that I was a Catholic somehow in a game where there's like not a whole lot of Catholic stuff. It's like, well, at least I'm not going to have profanity. But no. If you're wondering why I keep going in front of the camera and out, it's because the way my feet are perched, I have to like really lean forward to get my water. Because I've done live streams where I've forgotten to get a drink, and those were a nightmare. Ugh. So, a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I don't want to just complain about COPPA. That would be a huge waste of time. I also want to give a couple of my thoughts on other things that I didn't feel like making a full video on. I wanted to do it more informal to the fans. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about was my opinions on the Pokemon Sword and Shield controversy. As one who's not that much of a Pokemon fan, I played Let's Go Pikachu, and I didn't really like it that much. Although it was really fun to do the video. And I played through Detective Pikachu. That's about it. I did a little bit of Pokemon Tournament. My friend Mike kind of sort of forced me to play a little bit of Pokemon Yellow, and I hated that too. So, in my perspective, I think cutting the national dex doesn't mean a hoot, but it seems like their reasonings for cutting it were concerning, especially because it seems like a lot of people were taking the Japanese translation out of context. Now, I'm no expert on Japanese. If Miss Nicotendo were here, that'd be a different story, but alas, she isn't. So, a lot of people are claiming that Game Freak made the statement, we are redoing all of the models from scratch, and that is why we can't put in the Pokédex. The thing is, Japanese is a very nuanced language, and it's possible that they said we're redoing some of the models, we're redoing models in general, but they might not have said all of them. That being said, though, I never really liked the models in Pokemon to begin with. I always felt like the animations were so lazy. Like, have you seen Ghost Trick Phantom Detective on the Nintendo DS? That game's animations alone are way better than half of the stuff in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. The expressiveness of the characters is just off the charts. That was done by Capcom, so maybe they're a little bit higher up on the money chain. But on the other hand, Capcom doesn't have the financial backing of having Nintendo as the publisher. So not only is Pokemon the biggest franchise in the world, like literally, if you look up like highest grossing franchises, Pokemon outsells every other form of media by a landslide. So in other words, they should have the money and they should have the ability to put more effort into their games when games with way lower budgets and much smaller teams are able to produce really quality work. Just to name a few examples, look at the Banjo-Kazooie games. Those were developed by Rare and published by Nintendo in the 1998 to be precise. And the animations in Banjo-Kazooie were way better than the animations in Sword and Shield. Now, I really liked the European scale of the towns and the world. It doesn't make me want to travel to Europe any more than I already do, but on the other hand, having the big sprawling hills and the bagpipes, that was nice. Yes, thank you. I'll write a note right here. Please see premium Rapids video. Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, anti_. Have a great day. Synthwave, if you're still here, I'd be interested to know if something happened during the last live stream because you took off kind of suddenly. Was it your internet or was it something I said? Because I really hope I didn't hurt your feelings or anything like that. What was I saying? Yeah, so overall, Pokemon Sword and Shield just looks like a pretty ugly game, in my opinion. I never really found it graphically appealing. Sure, some of the designs for the towns were cool, but overall it looked even worse than Let's Go Pikachu, which that game looked great. I don't really have anything bad to say about Let's Go Pikachu apart from they animated certain blades of grass, but not all of them. But then again, what game does that? Not even Breath of the Wild animates every blade of grass, although they animate most of it. And it feels like Sword and Shield is like a step down from a remake of a Game Boy game, which just baffles me in all sorts of ways. Like, I feel like remakes, by their nature, shouldn't look as good as mainline games. Like, if, say, Ocarina of Time 3D looked better than Breath of the Wild, which is a brand new Zelda game made from the ground up for the new audience, as opposed to reusing assets from a Nintendo 64 game, sure, it should look better than the N64 game, but the following Zelda games should look better. Pokemon Sword and Shield was a remake of a 1996 Game Boy game. Pokemon Sword and Shield were a 2019 Nintendo Switch exclusive game. They look way worse. Now, graphics are a matter of opinion, but ugh, if they wanted to attract a new generation, that's not the way to do it. Also, I find that calling Pokemon a kids franchise, honestly, I don't think that's 100% accurate anymore. Now, I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong because they have toys and merchandise galore. But the majority of people that I see talking about Pokemon are like full adults. I hardly ever hear teenagers talking about Pokemon, like, ever. And I chaperone so many conferences. Like, I'm starting to lose count. I've chaperoned so many. Hey, Lunar Octopus, welcome back. It has been a while. Enjoy it while it lasts, because this, I don't know how much farther I'm going to be able to take these live streams with these new stupid regulations. Um, so far, what you missed is me talking about my thoughts on Sword and Shield, which honestly are basically just, I think Game Freak could have done a lot more, considering that games on the Nintendo 64 managed to look better than Sword and Shield, in my personal opinion. And I also think the story is boring, the sound effects are terrible, and the fact that you can't adjust the individual volume settings for like sound, music, and Pokemon screeches. You have to talk to a character. And it's like what? Pokemon Let's Go let you do that from the start. And I criticized that game for keeping in the Game Boy-esque shrieks, but at least you could turn them off. And you didn't have to go through a stupid side quest just to do it. So, Sword and Shield was the kind of game that I was never going to play. As soon as I saw the initial reveal trailer, I just said, nope, not for me. And hearing the controversy did not make me want the game any more or less than I used to. If anything, it sort of enhanced my own opinion of the game. I already said this looks stupid and lazy and a cash grab and just not that much fun. And sure, they did improve on a few things, which I really liked. Like, for example, in the menu of Pokemon moves, it now says whether a move is not very effective, effective, or super effective. That's something that I really had wished was in Let's Go, because as someone who did not play the old Pokemon games, it was really hard to wrap my mind around this rock, paper, scissors system that was supposedly so revolutionary. Well, if you're going to attract a new audience of players, you can't expect them to know something that maybe they weren't old enough to know. So the fact that they list that in the moveset was cool. The problem is I don't like that battle system to begin with. I wish that Pokemon was more like Pokken Tournament or more like Fire Emblem, where it was, say, grid-based and it had, like, certain statistics. As it stands, I complained in my Let's Go Pikachu review that when a move connects with another Pokemon, there's a health bar that goes down a certain degree, but you don't know exactly how many health points you have. You just have to guess, like, oh, they have a little bit of health left. What? Whatever happened to the number system in, say, Paper Mario or Fire Emblem? Death Stranding. Is that by any means for a Nintendo system? I have heard that that game didn't get a very great review by IGN, but then again, IGN's becoming a something else lately. So, Yeah, overall, Sword and Shield just wasn't gonna be my game no matter what. I looked into the controversy because I wanted to see if anyone else was agreeing with my opinions, and it seems like most of my opinions were justified before the controversy even began. So basically, I felt like, okay, Game Freak is just making official stuff that I was already complaining about. And now they're saying, yeah, Paul, now you can actually complain about it. So I don't know. Maybe they watched my videos and thought, if Paul isn't the target audience, then why don't we take into account everything that he's said that he hates about Pokemon and just completely ignore him? That's the only thing I can think of for why they would make such a terrible product. That being said, I have not played Sword and Shield, nor do I intend to. I've heard rumors that the game can cause damage to your Switch or your SD card. No thanks. With all the time I've put into Smash Brothers, I don't think I want to try to collect all 1,345 some odd spirits again. Now, for those of you that have said sorry for interrupting, please do not feel the need to apologize because I don't know how to read minds. If this was in real life, that would be a different story. Because in real life, you have like facial expressions and voice cues. But in chat, all you can see is my mug and you guys' stiff, non-moving profile pictures. That doesn't indicate to me whether you're typing, whether you're listening to what I'm saying, whether you're just like, when is this gonna be over? There's a lot of information missing. And then there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Um, I already talked about COPPA. I already talked about Sword and Shield. Oh, my Twitter account. I got a new Twitter account recently to sort of make up for all these restrictions. So just in case, in the very, very rare chance that YouTube disables people being able to comment on or like or dislike my videos, I want fans to be able to have that option, or non-fans. I mean, it's okay to dislike videos. I don't like it when you dislike a video without telling me why you dislike it, but I'm not opposed to the dislike button fundamentally. So my new Twitter channel is the Catholic Nintendo 1. Actually, let me double check that right now because currently I only have one follower. So I guess I'm really terrible at advertising. Heck, I can barely get stuff to be sold for free. Okay, it's the Catholic Nin 1. Let me send up a link for that. Yeah, so I made a new Twitter account. So Orthodox Christians or Orthodox Catholics? Because I don't even know what Orthodox Christians are. Orthodox Catholics, I don't have too many opinions on them because I haven't done a huge study about that. But one thing I do know is that they honestly, I haven't done enough of a study on Eastern Orthodoxy to give a definitive opinion. But I will say from what I know about the Orthodox Catholic Church, I really appreciate how they're very venerable. They really put us Catholics to shame at times. Although I think sometimes they go a little bit overboard in saying that we Catholics aren't as venerable because this one person who was like Orthodox and disagreed with the Catholic faith made a video called What Catholic Masses Are Like versus What Orthodox Masses Were Like. And the video he chose was something that no Catholic mass in their right mind would ever do. It was like a parade with a bunch of dancing and laughing, and it's like, not during the gospel proclamation. If anything, the only thing they'd be dancing with would be bottles of incense. I mean, sure, in some cultures they might be like, Hallelujah, hallelujah, Jesus, but there would still be a level of restraint. Like, they would be doing it in the pews, for example. They wouldn't be, like, dancing in these skin-tight parade clothes. They wouldn't be bouncing on a ball, juggling bowling pins. No Catholic does that. I feel like if you're gonna make a video saying why Orthodox Catholics are better than Catholics, at least get your facts right, you know? It's kinda like, how do I word this? It's kinda like if people say, "Oh, well, Catholics worship Mary, so therefore," it's like, "No, Catholics do not worship Mary. So you shouldn't even continue with that sentence because that is factually incorrect." It may seem like that to an outsider, but that is very much against doctrinal authority. In fact, some of the things that Protestants believe are actually more unbiblical than what Catholics believe, if you really look into it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being happy at Mass. I mean, when I went to Catholic Art Work Camp, they had, you know how at some Catholic Masses they have the blessing of holy water to renew the baptismal vows? Well, the priest did it with a paintbrush. Now, I don't know if that's actually allowed or not, but there are, like, masses I've been to that are oriented more towards the high school and up demographic that did make a couple of extra efforts to try to make the mass more exciting, more enjoyable, more like, "Guys, we're receiving Jesus Christ into our bodies. Like, this should be a big deal." Because let's be honest, I've been to a few Catholic masses where I'm just like, "Ugh, I can barely keep my eyes open." And at Catholic Art Work Camp, it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool that they're, like, clapping and dancing and, banging on drums and stuff like that. That's amazing. Going to NCYC, that was the perfect balance of fun versus seriousness because the priest's homily was 15 minutes long and extremely serious, but he started it out by doing the NCYC chat, as I like to call it. He started by saying, um, I'm not going to try his accent too hard because I don't want to butcher his butchering of English, but it went something like, when I say NC, you'll say YC. Clap, 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 clap. Ugh, that was priceless. See, he was trying to appeal to the target demographic, and he did a good job. And the songs that they chose for the mass were very reverent, but they were also very epic at the same time. They played a lot of old-fashioned songs, they played a lot of new songs. In fact, they played a song that was so new that our, state demographic was the very first group to one of the very first groups to actually hear that song in public. And I have it on my YouTube channel. Oh, I feel so lucky that I was one of the only people in all of YouTube to get a chance to film a live Steve Angrisano showing of a song that we were lucky enough to live in the area that heard it first. Then I didn't get a video of it during the actual NCYC because there was a girl that fainted in the row ahead of me, and I was praying over her. So that's why, if you guys are huge fans of my NCYC videos, that's why I didn't record it, because when a girl faints in front of you, what are you supposed to do? Just be like, "Oh, girl, you just go ahead and go ahead. It's just a live stream." If a girl faints in front of you, you're not just like, "Oh, girl, just go ahead and keep fainting because I got to film this for my YouTube channel." You just say, "Not YouTube channel right now." Yeah, it's a shame that they don't like the Book of Tobit because that book is so hilarious. It's about a man who gets a bird poop in his eyes and then he goes blind because of it. And so his son has to go on this whole journey to another country to try to find the cure to bird poop. It feels like the kind of things that people would make a huge deal out of on the news nowadays. Like they'd say, "Breaking news, child gets bird poop in eyes, goes blind from it." Well, first off, why would your I don't even know anymore. I feel like that's way more valid of a complaint than global warming because, that actually happened. So for those of you that don't know what NCYC is, it stands for National Catholic Youth Conference. And actually today was the last day of the conference of 2019. I wasn't able to go because there were too many girls and we didn't need all those chaperones. And Paul, you're a dude. So yeah, you just enjoy going to Holy Fire instead. Which, I hate to say it, guys, but I had to take down my Holy Fire video. I didn't want to. I really wanted to showcase that music, but with COPPA being COPPA, like, I'm pretty sure I can get away with my NCYC videos because those were intended for high school age and up. But NCYC or Holy Fire was intended for middle schoolers, and the COPPA might say, "Oh no, middle schoolers, that's in violation." So I didn't want to take any chances. Yeah, except Catholics don't call it the Apocrypha. We call it the Deuterocanon. And I believe the main reason we call it the Deuterocanon. Hello, Paisano Lord? I don't know what to think about what you said, so I just hope that's family friendly. We call it the Deuterocanon because they were written in the same language that the New Testament was written in. Plus, there's a lot of elements in the deuterocanonical books that are very, very highly teaching Catholic theology, that if the Protestants had that in their Bible, oh no, we'd have to rethink everything in the Bible. Yeah, there's parts in Maccabees that talk about purgatory, praying for the dead, atonement of sins. And there are also books in the New Testament that quote the Deuterocanon. Now, I'm not well versed in what caused the councils to determine what books were part of the canon of Scripture and what weren't. But I do know for a fact that even if the Protestants don't consider Tobit to be part of Scripture, it could be a good, I guess, metaphor of proper chaste sexuality. Because the whole point of the book isn't so much removing the bird poop from his eyes, it's more so of Tobias's journey to find true love as opposed to what's it called? True love as opposed to lust. Because Sarah's previous husbands had all been slaughtered by a demon, and I presume because they were in it for the fun, but not for the responsibility. Tobias, on the other hand, Tobias says, I want to actually love this woman for who she is, to be a father. And hello. Oh, it's okay. I'm just doing a live stream. Thank you. Hope you guys don't mind if I have dinner while I'm talking. Might give you a chance to type a few more things. I don't know what you mean by Christian identity, Lunar Octopus, but the Catholic Church has 7 more books in the Old Testament than the Protestant Bible does, but otherwise we share the New Testament. Although I've recently heard rumors that the Protestants don't acknowledge the book of Hebrews very much, and some don't acknowledge it at all, which is very concerning because I feel like the book of Hebrews is basically Catholic Theology 101, and if you don't read Hebrews juxtaposed with the rest of the New Testament books, you're going to miss out on a lot of subcontext. Like if you only read the book of Romans, for example, you're going to get the impression that we Catholics, or not Catholics, you're going to get the impression that St. Paul was saying, all you need is faith, and then you can be saved. But it's like, St. Paul talks way more about the necessity of tradition, works, love in other books of the Bible. Maybe it's just that the Romans happened to be needing more faith at the time. And there's certainly nothing wrong with having a lot of faith. But Jesus himself talked about the dangers of putting faith above love. he talked about how the Pharisees said that they had a lot of faith, but inwardly they were a bunch of hypocrites. Jesus also talked about the difference between hearers of the word and doers of the word. It's one thing to say, yeah, I believe in Jesus. Jesus, my Lord and Savior. Woohoo. But it's another if you see someone homeless and in need of help and you do nothing. In fact, the final judgment is said that Jesus is going to consider how you have helped your fellow brother and sister in the long run at the end of time. He doesn't say, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, he is going to look at how many have professed me as my Lord and as their Lord and Savior. He says, I was hungry, you gave me food. Thirsty, you gave me drink. In crave of banjo and kazooie, and you put them in Smash Brothers. Okay, that one was a quip. But no, he's strictly talking about works. So if Jesus himself is advocating the necessity for good works, you can't say that Christianity is against works, because that's just blatant falsehood. It's against empty works, like works for the sake of popularity or works for their own sake. That is against Catholic theology. I didn't mean for this to go on a huge tirade, but I'm glad. Well, if I am a descendant of the 12 tribes of Israel, my dad didn't tell me, because he did a whole DNA test of like as far back as my family could go, and he didn't mention anything about the 12 tribes of Israel. Although that'd be pretty cool if I was like Reuben's long lost ancestor or something like that. Because Reuben was like the one decent brother that tried really hard to make sure Joseph was treated with fairness. Joseph is actually my confirmation saint. Fun fact. He's basically a perfect role model for chastity and overall putting being a good husband above the fun of marriage. Which, nothing wrong with that. But Joseph shows that the priority was making sure that Mary was loved, cherished, and protected above all else. And if I ever take a wife, I totally agree with you, Victor, and welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. I don't think I've ever seen you on these streams before, so I just want to say that my streams are always very casual, talking to the fans, making sure you guys are being heard. If no one else, you'll be heard by me. And then I can acknowledge, oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. I should take that into consideration. Well, that's cool. How'd you find it? Oh, Welsh, huh? Indeed, welcome. Wow. That's really roundabout way of finding my channel, but I hope you enjoy yourself here. Everything I do is intended for high school and up, just as I guess a forward disclaimer. I'm gonna take the advice of anti-underscore from earlier and make like a new intro to my videos and to my whole channel in general that will like explicitly say that these videos are intended for high school and up. There's only one video I ever made that was explicitly intended for kids younger than 13, and I took down that video. Yeah, lucky you. If I didn't want underage people on this live stream, I would have put an age restriction on, but I didn't. I figured in a live stream, well, they can easily just grab you by the shoulder and whip you over the heel if I'm doing anything inappropriate, and they could sue me, they could throw me in jail, they could do all that stuff. So the fact that I'm sitting here in a confident male dominant pose being like, okay, You're really expecting me to do something inappropriate? What am I doing? Whereas there are certain things that I might talk about that are more age restrictive, like my Zero Time Dilemma novelization. Definitely not for people under the age of 17. Mm. So Victor, just as a little bit of I guess a roadmap to navigating my channel, I heavily rely on people that find my channel to go through my playlists. Lunar, did you mean to send that about the BitChute, or was that an error? Because it says it's being held for review for some reason. Well, yeah, 2019 was rough. I usually do my like top 20 best memories of the year, and I'm struggling to get past 16 because the lows are like really low. And I just wish that there was more oomph to this year. Like, I feel like the biggest thing that's happened is Fire Emblem Three Houses and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's DLC. But DLC can't hold up a game on its own. So you did intend to send those links? They weren't a hack or an error or anything like that, so I can go ahead and look at them? So as I was saying, Victor, or at least I meant to be saying, I probably got on a tangent, but I heavily rely on people that look at my channel to go through my playlists. So that way, if they're looking for video game content, they look in my video games playlist. If they're looking for Catholic stuff, they look in the Catholic playlist. Well, you wrote something that says, ever considered using BitChute to archive your videos? Oh, is that what you typed? Okay, well, let me see what it says. Oh, okay. I thought that was a link. Yeah, okay, cool. You're fine. You're fine. Because, yeah, I'm a man of many talents. I didn't used to be called the Catholic Nintendo nerd. I'd rather not say what I used to be called, but it was a very cool welcome to the Catholic party. My very first video was on January 1st, 2013. I did a song that I wrote, which it's called The Great Embrace, and I wrote it in 2012 and finally managed to play a guitar version of it in 2013. Then I made like 3 more videos after that, but they were like so spread out that I might as well not even have had a YouTube channel. Then I chaperoned a conference in 2016. That was also the conference that got me out of depression. And they were giving out these pins that were blessed by the Archbishop. And as we were getting the pins, we were asked to hold out our hand as though we were receiving Holy Communion. And the leaders of the conference would say, "Do you promise to make disciples of all nations?" And knowing that ahead of time, as our group was sitting in our chairs and waiting to be called, saying like group 3, whatever we were, is allowed to go up, I was thinking, I don't want to lie and say I do when I don't actually intend to make disciples of all nations. What should I do? And that's when I made my first reboot video, and I called it Operation Epic Introduction. And ever since then, I've been regularly uploading on this channel. I went from 1 video a year to like basically 3 videos a week. All because I wanted to please God. Now, for those of you wondering, well, Paul, how come you don't do more videos that are strictly Catholic? It's because there's only so much that I can talk about before I need to relate it to something that I like. And if I can't relate it to something that I like, it's hard to find a way to talk about it in a way that's helpful to my own brain and what I'm used to from public speaking. So, in other words, if I'm just quoting off the facts, you could easily just look up the catechism or something like that. If you're strictly looking at my videos and want to know from a, I guess, younger demographic, then you'd want something that would appeal to that demographic. And I happen to be very much a Nintendo fan. I love Breath of the Wild. I love Super Mario Odyssey. I love Fire Emblem. I don't love every Zelda game ever, but I do really like Breath of the Wild. And so, if that's what I enjoy, then that's what I'm going to use to relate it to the faith. However, there's only so many examples that I can give before I start running out of ideas. So, I learned of a new way to bring video games and Catholicism together, and that's through my Catholic reviews. The problem is that I can't do too many of them because story-driven games that appeal to me are pretty rare on Nintendo systems. So, if there's ever a story-driven video game that has high elements of Catholicism in it, sure, I'll do a Catholic review. There just aren't that many of them. Undertale is one that I thought was incredibly Catholic. Fire Emblem Three Houses, I mean, the main plot of the game is about the church. Then there's Breath of the Wild has aspects of it. A Link to the Past was originally called Triforce of the Gods in Japan. And then Nintendo of America was like, we are anti-religious, so we're going to change it to A Link to the Past and remove the promotional art of, for those of you that haven't been on my live streams before, be prepared to be wowed. Link kneeling in front of a crucifix. Doesn't get much more Catholic than that. So, I'm also hoping that even if I don't make a video that's strictly Catholic, that it can... Oh yeah, sounds good, Lunar Octopus. My next review ought to be Dragon Quest XI if all goes according to plan. Even if I don't talk about something that's strictly Catholic, I'm hoping that it can open up an avenue for a discussion. So, for example, let's say, I don't know, just to give an example, let's say I made a video about Myers-Briggs, because I love talking about Myers-Briggs. And then someone uses that as an example to say, well, what Myers-Briggs type do you think Jesus was? So then that would give me an opportunity to evaluate Jesus and say, well, I believe that he uses these functions to really good effect. So then it gives me an opportunity to say, like, these were some of the high points of Jesus's life. And because he's, God, and come in. Oh, I have a big family, as you guys might have noticed. So therefore, if Jesus is using all of these great personality psychological traits and we're asked to imitate him by virtue of our baptism, then that in itself is a starting point to a good conversation. In fact, and shut me up, guys, please shut me up if you're tired of hearing this story, but one of the best conversations about the faith that I ever had didn't start out as a conversation about the faith. It actually started out as a conversation about Harry Potter. So, let me put a disclaimer in here just in case. Okay, so this happened at NCYC way back in the yesteryear of 2017, back before cars were even invented. I'm just kidding. I was in line for reconciliation, and the line was insanely long. I think I was in line for like an hour by the time one of the attendants of the conference came and said, hey guys, just so you know, there's like 300 priests all throughout the football stadium. So you can like switch to another line if you want because there's so many priests. You might as well not wait all in one line. I decided, well, I've been waiting here for so long. Excuse me. I've been waiting here for so long that I'm not going to give up now. I'm going to keep on waiting. So I did. And it turned out that about half of the line decided to move over. And when I looked behind me, the only person behind me was a girl wearing a Harry Potter t-shirt. Now, because I am terrible at remembering faces, I wouldn't be able to tell you too much about what the girl looked like. I mean, I have a little, like, very fuzzy image in my head, but apart from that, I just remember, I think she was blonde. That's about all that I can remember right now. She had a Harry Potter t-shirt. I said, cool, I love Harry Potter. So we started talking about houses, what house we would be in, what we love, what books we like the best. And we did that for about, I don't know, half hour-ish. It felt like a half hour, however long it was. And as we got ever so closer to the outdoor football stadium, because like the line went under the football stadium so that we'd have enough room to stand. And it like went into the stands, and the priest was sitting on one of the chairs in the football stadium, and because there was loud music playing, 23,000 people, no one would be able to hear our confession even if they wanted to. I mean, I had to shout to the priest just so that he could tell what sins I was trying to confess. Like, that's how loud it was. Ultimate privacy. And as we were like getting out into the light, the attendant passed out an examination of conscience. So we stopped talking and we looked at the examination, and at that point we just got dead silent. And then the girl proceeded to talk about her life. This was, for the most part, pretty unprompted. I started talking about my life too, a little bit, but it was mostly stuff that she was going through. And I guess she didn't really realize that I was like older than her at first, because after I finished telling her some advice, she said, wow, Paul, this is the kind of thing I'd expect to hear at a keynote presentation. And yet, a random guy in the reconciliation line is telling me all this stuff. And I think at that point I said something akin to, well, with age comes wisdom. And then I don't want to say absolutely everything she told me because I feel like she kind of wanted it to be between the two of us and God and the eventual priest that she went to confession with. But in the end, she gave me a hug. Actually, we hugged twice. And she asked me a question. And I'm going to paraphrase it ever so slightly, just so that her identity can still remain anonymous. But she said something along the lines of, again, paraphrasing so that you don't get the exact idea. She said, is it possible that someone like me could find true love in the Catholic Church? And I responded, well, first she said, Paul, don't say anything that you think is gonna like make me feel better or try to please me. She says, I want you to be brutally honest with me. If you think the answer is no, just say no. Like, tell me it as it is. So I said, I do think that you can find true love as you are, because by virtue of your baptism, you are God's daughter. And so he's going to make sure that you find the person that he wants for you, because what father isn't overprotective of his daughter? That was one of the best faith conversations I ever had. And to this day, I feel like that's like in and of itself a new form of evangelization. That you start out by talking about something that interests them, and then you move on to something that is of a greater purpose. And St. Paul does that all the time. Well, maybe not all the time, but there were a couple of examples where St. Paul quotes what the people love. Like, I believe when he was talking to the. My dad's so much better at this than me. Basically, he quoted pagan philosopher at one point because that's what they were into. So he said, okay, well, if this pagan guy is saying something and it happens to be in harmony with the Catholic faith, and that's what you guys like, then let me quote your very own guy to you. So, in other words, if she wasn't into Harry Potter, I probably wouldn't have wanted to talk to her. And if I hadn't talked to her, she might not have had a very huge impact at that conference. And if she hadn't had a huge impact at that conference, then I probably would have just said, well, the conference was fun and all, but what was the point? Well, that was the point. The point was very clearly, I think that girl really needed someone to talk about her life with and feel like she could trust that person. And it was in a crowded football stadium, too. Okay, I think. I could go on and on forever about these amazing experiences I've had. But long story short, if you really want to have the ultimate faith experience, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. That was something Catholic Heart Work Camp said a lot. Is they said step outside your comfort zone a bit because God is calling you to radical discipleship. And radical has multiple meanings depending on the context that it's used. In some cases it means the root of. So like the radical root would be like the square root. And then it can also mean like revolutionary. It can also mean going back to basics. I know, it seems like a contradiction, doesn't it? And if you want to have a radical conversion, then that involves doing something that you're not familiar with so that you can become familiar with this new stuff. So if you're having trouble figuring out, like, Paul, what are you trying to say here? Let me put it in one sentence. I went on a mission trip. I hated mission trips. That sums it up for you right there. I did something that I thought was awful. I did something that I was terrified of. I went on a trip that cost me so much money that I'm surprised I didn't go into depression back then. I did something that would potentially be repeating the worst day of my life. And yet, it ended up becoming the best day of my life. All because I was willing to take that giant leap of faith forward and say, you know what, God? I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm just going to let you take over. And I guess you could say, you don't necessarily need to imitate my life to be a perfect Catholic. In fact, all of us are sinners. So I'm sure even among like your idols of like the best Catholics or the best Christians ever, they probably have something in their life that's messed up. I know I do. I'm far from perfect. I have quite a few issues to sort through. But then again, Jesus called the disciples in despite their imperfections. He already knew ahead of time that one of them would betray him, one of them would deny him 3 times, and who knows what the others did. But yet he said, I'm not going to let sin be the ultimate factor here. I'm going to look at the fullness of the person, what they did before, during and after their conversion. And based on the disposition of their heart, that's how I'm going to judge them. So, in other words, I'm not trying to say I am the ultimate perfect, like, you got to follow me or else type of Catholic. What I am trying to say is that I've had the opportunity to meet people that weren't necessarily trying to help me become a Catholic. And during that process of just normal talking, normal everyday conversations about stuff that people like to talk about, that ended up helping me become a Catholic through a radical Catholic setting. I hope I made that clear enough. I've been babbling for over an hour. Dang. You guys are really patient with me. I really appreciate it. I really do. All the 2 of you that are here. Okay, that was my last piece of my dinner. So now I can get back to the real stuff. One minute. Okay, all done. All right, so plans for the channel's future. And again, feel free to interrupt if you have anything you want to add or suggest yourself. I don't consider myself the world's greatest socializer. But for now, until you guys add in that comment section what you want, a couple of my plans upcoming for this channel. I did a review of Dragon Quest XI for the Switch. I just haven't published it yet. I'm still, I guess, waiting for... I guess I don't want to pump out too many video game reviews too soon, because if I do that, then I guess I've heard that channel creators that pump out too much content too quickly are likely to not get the visibility that they want because people only have such a limited attention span. So I try to space out some of my videos on purpose. Even though I could theoretically upload like 5 at a time some days, I choose not to because I want you guys, with your busy schedules and schools and whatever you're going through, to be able to have time to watch it at your own convenience. If you want me to upload it right away, I will. But if you need more time to sort out your life, watch other YouTubers, check out Miss Neko Tendo's channel because she's awesome, that kind of stuff, go for it. I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all of YouTubers. Just saying that as a person that really enjoys going on YouTube as a hobby myself, I like thinking about, how do I see YouTube? And if I see YouTube like this, then I have to be one of those, if you can dish it out, you should be able to take it types of people. So if I'm going to be like, ugh, you creators are doing all this, ugh, then I ought to be able to look at my own channel and say, am I the very thing that I hate? That being said, though, there are channels that post daily content that I would not mind. I would not mind binge watching channels that did daily content. My favorite YouTuber currently is the Wii Viewer, and the stuff that he makes is Well, honestly, for those of you that haven't watched my channel for a long time, you should know that he's the biggest inspiration for my style of reviews out of anyone else. If you want to know what really inspired me to review video games, it was the cancellation of Nintendo Power. That stung a lot. Now, they did bring it back in the form of a podcast, but they still don't do reviews. And Nintendo Power taught me a lot of the do's and don'ts of reviewing. But at the same time, I also wanted my reviews to be Paul-esque. You know, like if people watch the review, they'd say, "Oh, this was definitely not any other person or not just a jaded journalist. This was Paul, like just being Paul, you know?" Basically, you knew right away that it was my style, my way, not endorsed, and I don't really put a lot of emphasis on peer pressure. So I don't force myself to spew out everyone else's opinions when I have a different one. For example, my lovely Link's Awakening review is pretty darn negative. And from what I've been told, I'm the only person on the internet that doesn't really have a lot of nice things to say about Link's Awakening in general. Maybe it's because I thought that because Link's Awakening was so dated, that Nintendo and Grezzo would take the opportunity to sort of bring it to a modern audience. Well, they kind of failed, in my personal opinion. I I think the whole like square by square dungeon design approach just I mean, for avid fans of the original, I could see that being like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a huge deal." But for people that didn't play the original Link's Awakening, I would say, yeesh. If you want people to like Zelda games, you have Breath of the Wild. Like, I don't know too many people that hate that game. In fact, I know more people that love Breath of the Wild than hate it. The worst thing I've heard people say about that game, well, okay, a few bad things I've heard people say. They say it has bad frame rate. That's been patched. They say the shrines are too repetitive. That's been patched. Well, you have to pay for it, but still. If you have the Champions Ballad, there's like additional shrines. They say the story's lousy. I mean, that it kind of still is, but now they're making Breath of the Wild 2. So, based on an interview, they said that Breath of the Wild 2 was going to be their ideas for Breath of the Wild. Oh my gosh, how many times am I going to say that? All this repetition is driving me crazy. The sequel was based on their ideas for DLC that were so expansive they wanted to make a full-fledged made for Switch sequel. So you could say that they basically did the Super Mario Galaxy 2 approach 9 years later, or whenever development started. Why am I not excited about this as much as I should be? Because I don't know what it's going to turn out to be. It could be another Zelda 2, for all I know. And we all know what happens when I have expectations for something. Generally speaking, not too many video games live up to my expectations. A few exceptions. Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, aside from a couple of minor nitpicks, were about as grand as I had hoped they would be. Well worth picking up my 3DS for them. Breath of the Wild ended up surpassing a lot of my expectations, with the major exception being the story, but even that could have been a lot worse. Super Mario Odyssey was pretty much what I expected. Then again, I didn't have too many expectations to begin with. The only thing I really expected was, and by expected, I don't mean this is what I wanted. This is what I legitimately thought Nintendo was going for. That they were going for an open world Mario adventure, which it turns out they weren't. It was more so a sandbox Mario World. Now, the difference between open world and sandbox is that sandboxes are, by nature, non-linear. You have, in an actual sandbox at like a nursery or wherever you would find them, they have the pile of sand and you have your toys, and you get to choose how you want to position those toys. Do you want the slide close to the edge, or do you want it closer to the middle? Do you want the dinosaur to be on top of the fortress, or do you want the dinosaur to be to the side of the fortress? Basically, you're given tools within a confined space, but you're not told how to use those tools. Open world games, on the other hand, are more so of like, you get an area that's like about as big as one of the United States, and you're given very few, if any, restrictions on where you can go and how you go about going it. So, the main difference between Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey is that Super Mario Odyssey has a bunch of little itty bitty chunks that are very nonlinear. Breath of the Wild is a huge world that's totally nonlinear. The only real things that you have to do in a particular order are, you have to get past the Great Plateau tutorial, unless you do that hack where you like get past it by cheating. And then after the tutorial, the game just says, okay, the world's yours. You can go anywhere. And they don't tell you, wait. You really ought to get this kind of armor before you go in. No, if you want to, you can just say, have a bunch of amiibos, and then just keep eating stuff to offset the heat in the desert. Now, there are certain areas that they're not going to let you go into unless you get the proper equipment. But at least you can go to the entrance to the area. That being said, you can go straight to Ganon. Mario Odyssey doesn't allow for that. Mario Odyssey requires you to collect a certain criteria within one sandbox to move to the next. Breath of the Wild shouldn't be considered a sandbox, because if it was a sandbox game, then Hyrule Field would have to be a big area. Then the Great Plateau would have to be a big area. But the thing is, all of them are connected to a certain degree. And you can walk from one end of the map to the other without encountering a single loading screen or a single screen transition. That was a huge tangent. I don't really care. Apparently there's only one person watching, so they haven't left yet, so thanks. You guys haven't stopped me. The comment section is still pretty empty, so I'm just going to keep going. What other games did not live up to my expectations? Smash Ultimate didn't at first, but once they introduced Banjo-Kazooie, I stopped complaining. Well, okay, I did expect more Final Fantasy songs, and I did want more Kid Icarus songs, but most of all, there were two major things that I said they've just got to have this in the next Smash Brothers game, if nothing else. Even if they cut half of the characters from the roster, at least they had to include these two things, and that was a story mode and Banjo. And they gave us both, and way more. And I couldn't be happier. Well, okay, if I really wanted to say I could be happier, if they put Neku in as the next DLC fighter, that'd be cool. But that's only mildly happier. I might not like the way they handle Neku, for example. There are so many people that say, put Waluigi in! But what if they don't like the way that Sakurai designs Waluigi? What if they don't like his stage? What if they don't like his moveset? What if they say, Sakurai, you disappointed us. We've been asking for Waluigi for this many years, and now you've butchered him. To tell you the truth, I kind of feel like they did that with Hero to a certain extent. Like, Dragon Quest is like the biggest video game franchise in Japan. It's practically considered a national holiday when a Dragon Quest game gets released over there. Now, I am not a huge Dragon Quest fan myself. I beat Dragon Quest XI, but that's about it as far as my exposure to the franchise. And then, when I go back to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate after playing Dragon Quest XI, I realize, wow, they just were really... Now, I don't know if it was necessarily Sakurai's fault, but I feel like either he wasn't able to or he didn't want to hype up the hero as much as he could have been. For example, you only have 8 songs from the Dragon Quest series. None of them are remixes, and all of them are, I don't want to misuse the word, all of them are synthesized arrangements. None of them are based on a live, actual full orchestra. So as a result, Dragon Quest was one of the first video game series to actively have a community that would put orchestral piano guitar arrangements for their songs because for the time they were considered super grand. But yet, when the default design of the hero is supposed to be advertising the coming of Dragon Quest XI for the Switch, not to be confused with Dragon Quest XI that had already been out on other systems, they're saying like, well, let's get excited for the release on Nintendo systems. Well, if they really wanted to do that, why couldn't the 2 tracks they chose from Dragon Quest XI be the symphonic versions? As it turns out, they ended up being the synthesized versions. And they sound awful if you've actually played Dragon Quest XI S. It kind of almost makes me want to puke in my mouth whenever I hear them again. But then you take, say, Banjo. Someone who, in my opinion, is quite possibly even more of an icon than the hero. You've got 10 tracks that come with him, 7 of which are remixes, and one of them is done by none other than the original composer, Grant Kirkhope. That, in my opinion, almost made Banjo worth it alone. Their movesets were plucked straight from the original games, and overall, it felt like more of a reason to get excited than, oh, just another anime swordsman character. It was also the first 100% Western character to join Smash Brothers. Now you could argue, but what about K. Rool and Diddy Kong? They were both designed by Rare. Yes, they were designed by Rare, but Nintendo still owned the rights to Donkey Kong. So in other words, it was still a Japanese-owned license that had American or British designers working on it. I've been talking to myself for... never mind. Banjo and Kazooie were designed by British people and owned by British people. Now they're owned by American people. So they were the first Western characters to join. Now, you could argue, but Paul, what about Bomberman and Shovel Knight? They're assist trophies. And technically, if you want to be really nitty-gritty about that, then you'd technically have to go all the way back to Smash for Wii U, which had a trophy of Commander Video from the Bit Trip games. That's the first 100% non-Japanese cameo that appeared in Smash Brothers. Another thing I want to bring up with regards to the future of this channel is I want you guys to really be on, you guys meaning one whopping person. I really want my fans to keep me on the loop of where maybe I am straddling the line. I've been known for overlooking certain guidelines when I'm not trying to break rules before because I need things worded in a very specific way. So if you guys see that maybe because you weren't homeschooled like I was, you know more of like what certain demographics want more than others, say, Paul, I think you should be careful with this video because COPPA's going to come after you. Let me know. With that, I think I've pretty much lost my audience, so I think I might exit out of the stream pretty soon if someone doesn't pipe up. I mean, if you're enjoying what I'm saying and are just saying, oh, Paul, I'm just here to listen, please don't stop on my account. Well, at least let me know that you're listening so that I'm not just talking to myself for 19 minutes straight. Ugh. Well, I said my piece. I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts, my opinions, the content of my channel. Hopefully, I can still stick around, but if I can't, then it was nice knowing you. So, with that being said, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and watch this last comment if you come in late. All right, later, folks.